Voilà, avant de conclure cette seconde journée du forum Netexplo et après avoir vu, la journée a été longue, comment le digital a changé la consommation, l'industrie, les relations au sein des entreprises et tout le reste, on voulait jeter un œil sur finalement le secteur qu'on a le moins bien couvert en 2 jours, l'éducation, comment le digital change l'éducation avec les MOOC, ce savoir gratuit distribué en ligne, avec la possibilité aussi depuis récemment d'avoir de véritables diplômes qualifiants de grandes universités sans jamais y mettre les pieds. Autant de questions qu'on est allé poser à Peter Todd, le nouveau directeur général d'HEC, interview réalisée il y a quelques jours. Regardez. Bonjour Peter Todd.
Bonjour.
Thank you for taking the time to do this interview. Until a few months ago, last year, you were the Dean of the Deux Hôtels Business School at McGill in Montreal. You are now the new head of HEC. When you took the job, you said that HEC is a great school with great challenges. What I'd like to know is, on your first day on the job, last September, what was the first challenge that came to mind?
Well, I think the notion of great challenges for the school is it's a place that's gone so far, that's developed so well internationally, that's built a great cadre of researchers and has fantastic students. And the real challenge is how do you top that? How do you go further? How do you take the school higher, and how do we move forward? And so I've been spending my time the last several months talking to people, listening, learning, and trying to understand that.
You come here with a bit of a reputation as an innovator. You have a background, an academic background in digital and business transformation. Yeah. How did digital change things in academia in North America?
Well, I think we have to say digital's changing things in academia in North America. I think the academic world in North America, much like here in Europe, changes and moves slowly. And we tend to think of this digital revolution as something that's come on the scene in the last couple of years. In fact, we can go back to the 1990s and through the 2000s and see different flavors of digital, whether it was video conferencing and the delivery of remote courses in that fashion, through learning management systems to allow for online conversations, into technologies and apps we bring into the classroom to get direct feedback from students. I think today we see a little bit all of those platforms have come together in a way we can grow to great scale in delivery, and that's with the advent of MOOCs. I think all of us looking at that and saying, how does that technology change us? How does it disrupt what we do? But I think to really understand what makes some of these innovations work in schools, you have to look beyond the technology. You have to look to what are the issues for the student, what are the issues for the professor, and how is the technology going to make a change to contribute positively to the environment in the classroom or contribute to a new way of delivering things. And all of the innovations that I've seen that have stuck or have been successful have that notion that they start with the customers to some extent, and the customers are the students, and the customers for us as well are the professors.
So what does that digital transformation look like at HEC right now?
Well, I think at HEC, we've gone through a long period, and I'm, of course, learning about it coming in, gone through a long period of experimentation in a whole variety of ways, whether it's courses on iTunes, through to the development of MOOCs. And I think that we're very much trying to create an environment where these things happen bottom up, but where we try to build institutional support, bring in the right kind of expertise to support the development of new digital applications, new systems, the development of MOOCs. And if we look at the journey, we know we're going to have discoveries along the way. We know, like every other organization, we're going to stumble along the way. And we know that we have to adapt as we go forward. The MOOCs we've developed, for example, we've seen expected things and unexpected things. We've developed a handful of MOOCs in core areas that are important to us as a school and where we think we have some distinctive capabilities. We've put those out as a partner with Coursera on the Coursera platform. We've had good participation in those MOOCs, some 170,000 people registered in our first half a dozen MOOCs. And if you think about that for a school with 4,500 students and 55,000 alumni globally, you see remarkable reach and potential. Perhaps even more important for us, we discovered that half the people who registered for those MOOCs didn't have any idea about HEC Paris before they started those MOOCs. So when we think about some of the technologies, not just as delivery vehicles, but as brand development vehicles, there's some very interesting potential.
It's a wonderful way to enlarge your footprint.
Yeah, a wonderful way to, I think, develop your brand. HEC is a school that, obviously, we're a force in France. We're a great European business school, and we have a goal to be among the top 10 business schools in the world. And to do that, you've got to carry your brand to the world. And the technology, beyond its power for helping us educate, is showing us that there's some potential to develop the mark globally as well.
Of course, it comes with its own set of challenges. One of your colleagues at another great business school in France was telling me that the problem now is that we'll be living in a world where knowledge will essentially be free. So now the schools have to find where their own added value lies. What's that going to look like at HEC?
Yeah, I think that idea that we can simply put the knowledge out on a platform and everyone in the world is going to benefit from it, has some merit to it in allowing people to have access to education maybe who couldn't in the past. And at the same time, particularly when I think about business education, management's a people business. And there's still going to be a long and strong role, I think, for face-to-face education. And part of our challenge is to figure out how to blend the technology with what we do in face-to-face learning. And putting those ingredients together, putting the pieces together, are what's going to be important for us. And I don't think we can say, and I don't personally believe anyone can say today what the precise recipe is for that for the future. That's why I think the experimentation, the feedback, the ability of the technologies to give us data about the way people are behaving and performing are going to allow us to fine-tune and develop over time.
10, 20 years ago, most schools were mainly looking to remain relevant in a really fast-changing business world. Is that just another way in which you have to remain relevant?
Yeah, I think that's clearly part of the equation, and I think also we're seeing the technology open up with the idea of open access, this idea of accessibility to the world, and that's maybe taking the availability of education to another level. So it's not something that I think that is replacing what we do locally and what we do well. It's something that's opening up new opportunities for people globally, and I think we, as schools, with a mandate not just to teach kind of elite students who come in, but to provide opportunity and access to people to knowledge in the world, that this becomes potentially a great platform to develop that kind of social contribution as well that can come out of the schools to help people learn and help people get ahead.
Will what you teach online influence what's actually being taught inside the walls of the school? Will it change things internally?
Yeah, I think there's no question that it will. I think that I think the idea of, and we've already done it to some extent, taking some of the MOOCs that we've developed and introducing those as part of the learning process for students on the campus. And that can do a couple of things for you. You can have the students working on much more structured material on their own time, and then the classroom time becomes a much richer opportunity for dialogue, for debate, for argument, for interchange, and so on.
How different would you say business school students today, be it HEC or any of the others, are different from what they were maybe 10, 20, 30 years ago? How different are their expectations, or maybe how they imagine their future?
Well, I think when we think about what's happened with the technology, it's driven this importance of spontaneity on the one hand. People want things to happen very quickly. I saw a little article yesterday that says in the last decade our attention span has gone from 12 seconds to 8. So when we think about that we've got 8 seconds to grab someone and make an impression, to deliver a message, and we think about the channels through which people take those messages. All those things are going to affect over time the way we teach and the way we connect with students. I think students want to be more active in their learning today than they were 20 years ago as well. The technology certainly helps us to facilitate that and to have a more dynamic learning environment. And I think they want to pace their own learning to some extent. So taking control is, I think, a classic characteristic of this generation of young people, whether it's taking control of their futures because they want to be entrepreneurs, it's taking control of the classroom because they want to learn the way they want to learn. and so on. So we have to adapt and adjust, as we always have through generations of students.
One of the things that made you famous at McGill was your ability to raise money for the school. You raised 75 million for those hotels, and I was just thinking, if you were to raise the same amount of money at HEC, what would you do with the money?
Well, if I'd raise the same amount of money at HEC, they'll tell me I've fallen short. So, HEC already completed a great campaign of over $100 million, 100 million euros, pardon me, a few years ago. Money for the schools is critical to invest in excellence, and excellence comes from having the very best professors. We compete in a global marketplace to recruit academic talent. You need to be at the market to be able to hire those people. We compete globally for students. 50% of our students now come from outside of France. We want to be able to attract the very best from around the world. We also want to be able to have access to HEC for anybody who merits coming to HEC. And so that means also having resources to give scholarships and bursaries to students who don't have the opportunity and the financial means to come to school. So it's investing in those things. It's investing in, as we talk about technology transformation, it's investing in digital infrastructure to build a 21st century campus for HEC. And then it's saying, where do we go from there and what are the next steps? We're a great international research-oriented business school. We're building out themes to layer on top of that we need to invest in, like entrepreneurship, like digital transformation, like social responsibility. So plenty of needs.
The other thing you did at McGill is that you actually raised tuition to make the school more competitive and to raise more money. Yeah. I'd like to know if you're going to do the same at HEC, but you don't have to answer that question right now. What I'd really like to know is how much does everything that's going on, digital, the MOOCs and everything, how can that interfere with such an idea? How can you have higher tuition on one side and cheap or free knowledge and courses online on the other hand?
Right. Well, I think what's incumbent on us is to be offering experience on the campus, blending technology into our learning, of course, but to be offering an experience for the students that adds value for their futures. And the value comes not just from what happens in the course, but from all of the interactions around the courses, from the collaborative learning to the professional support to the networks that we help students to build. And look, there's always been in history roles for different kinds of learning at different levels and at different levels of cost and investment as well. And that I don't think is going to change. We may see that market pull apart. I think we may see schools that are in the middle of that market be in more difficulty. HEC has the great privilege through all the hard work that people have done to be an elite business school in the world. I think there'll still be a place for what we do for a long, long time. At the same time, we're going to have to adjust to the realities of the marketplace. And at the same time, as I said before, we have a social responsibility as well to try to provide great learning and great education. And it's incumbent on us to figure out, schools have always used certain programs and certain approaches to subsidize others. And you subsidize things that where people need help and people need support. So my hope is these two models will reinforce each other at the end of the day.
You've been at this job for almost 6 months now. Any big surprises, good or bad?
The biggest positive surprise I always say, and it's because you're coming from another country, another culture, une autre langue aussi, that as I've come here, the sense of engagement of people in the HEC community is something much more powerful than I understood from looking at it from the outside. The attachment of the professors, the attachment of students, the attachment of the staff to the school, the engagement of the alumni and the people in local and global enterprises, but in organizations, particularly here in Paris that I've been spending time with, who really want to help and support the school to drive it forward. And I think as well, and it was something I thought I would see coming in, but a very strong culture where people are proud of the excellence that's been achieved, but not at all satisfied with where we are today. And so those have been great, great outcomes for me to see.
Well, Peter Todd, bienvenue en France, and thank you for your time.
Merci beaucoup.